It drifted across the bright morning cafe like a careless breeze, sharp enough to sting but quiet enough for people to pretend they hadn't heard it. A few customers exchanged amused glances. Others lowered their eyes into their coffee cups. At the center of it all sat a tired-looking father in a faded gray sweatshirt, balancing a laptop bag over one shoulder while trying to feed pancakes to his 6-year-old daughter. His hair was slightly unkempt, dark circles rested beneath his eyes, and exhaustion seemed stitched into every movement he made. To strangers, he looked like a man barely holding his life together. What nobody realized was that within 2 seconds, everything they believed about him would change forever. Before we begin this emotional story, take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who still believes in kindness, and subscribe to Heart Kindness Tales if you believe people deserve second chances and that every person carries a story the world cannot see. It was a beautiful spring morning in Portland, sunlight pouring through large glass windows, painting golden reflections across wooden tables and polished floors. Parents chatted softly while business professionals typed emails between sips of coffee. The atmosphere was warm, ordinary, and peaceful. Elias Mercer looked anything but peaceful. At 38 years old, he carried the invisible weight of years that had changed him completely. 3 years earlier, he had buried his wife after a long battle with cancer. Since then, every sunrise had become another mission, waking up early, preparing breakfast, helping his daughter get dressed, working remotely, attending school meetings, cleaning the apartment, paying bills, and somehow finding enough energy to smile when his daughter needed reassurance that everything would be okay. His daughter, Nora, was his entire world. She had inherited her mother's bright eyes and endless curiosity. Even after losing someone so important at such a young age, she still found reasons to laugh. She still danced when songs played in grocery stores. She still collected small flowers from sidewalks and handed them to strangers. But being a single father was harder than Elias ever imagined. People often looked at him with pity. Others looked at him with judgment. Many assumed he was incompetent simply because he was a man raising a child alone. Teachers sometimes directed questions toward grandmothers. Store employees asked if someone else would be picking Nora up. Other parents whispered assumptions about how difficult it must be for a child without a mother. Elias learned to remain silent. He learned that grief changes people. And loneliness changes them even more. That morning had already been difficult. Nora had experienced a nightmare during the night and refused to sleep afterward. Elias managed only 3 hours of rest before preparing breakfast and rushing out for a scheduled online meeting later that day. The cafe was supposed to be a small reward. Pancakes for Nora. Coffee for him. An hour together before responsibilities swallowed the day. Then the accident happened. Nora reached for her cup, her small fingers slipped, and orange juice splashed across the table, dripping onto the floor. "Oh no," she whispered softly, tears immediately filling her eyes. Elias quickly grabbed napkins. "It's okay, sweetheart," he said gently. But nearby laughter interrupted the moment. 3 younger adults sitting at a neighboring table exchanged smirks. One woman shook her head. Another man chuckled quietly. They weren't cruel enough to say anything directly, but their expressions communicated enough. "Look at him. He can't even manage breakfast. Single dads always look overwhelmed. Poor kid." Elias had experienced similar reactions countless times. Usually, he ignored them. Usually, he smiled politely. Usually, he chose peace. But deep inside, each judgment left another invisible bruise. Because nobody saw the nights he stayed awake comforting Nora. Nobody saw him learning how to braid hair through online tutorials. Nobody saw him practicing children's songs because Nora missed hearing lullabies. Nobody saw the tears he shed alone after putting her to bed. People only saw exhaustion. They never saw love. Nora lowered her head. "I ruined breakfast." Elias knelt beside her. He wiped her cheeks. He smiled. And he reminded her of something he repeated almost every day. Mistakes happen. Juice can be cleaned. Pancakes can be replaced. But you are the best thing that ever happened to me. For a moment, the world seemed softer again. Until chaos exploded near the entrance. A loud crash shattered the peaceful atmosphere. A masked man burst through the cafe doors. Customers screamed. Coffee cups toppled. Chairs scraped violently across the floor. The stranger appeared disoriented and aggressive, clutching a metal object in his hand. Panic spread instantly. Parents grabbed children. Employees froze. People rushed toward exits. Fear moved through the room faster than thought itself. And in less than 2 seconds, Elias Mercer transformed. The exhausted single father disappeared. The quiet man carrying napkins vanished. Something else emerged. Years of training. Years of discipline. Years of instinct. His eyes sharpened immediately. His breathing slowed. His posture changed. He assessed distances, exits, obstacles, and risks almost instantly. Moving with astonishing precision, Elias lifted Nora safely behind a thick support column, shielding her body completely. Then he crossed the room. Fast. Controlled. Calculated. Like someone who had done this hundreds of times before. Within seconds, he intercepted the individual before anyone else could react. He redirected the man's movement away from nearby families. Guided him safely downward. Disarmed him. Controlled the situation without unnecessary violence. Without panic. Without hesitation. Silence filled the cafe. People stared. The same people who had laughed minutes earlier sat frozen in disbelief. Elias remained calm. His expression wasn't angry. It wasn't proud. It was simply focused. Police arrived shortly afterward. Officers quickly secured the situation. After brief questioning, it became clear the man was experiencing a severe mental health crisis rather than attempting an organized attack. Thankfully, no one had been seriously injured. As paramedics assisted the individual, one officer approached Elias. Recognition flashed across his face. "You served?" Elias nodded quietly. Several customers leaned closer. The officer smiled respectfully. "Special operations?" Another nod. Someone whispered. "Delta Force?" Elias hesitated. Then simply answered. "Long time ago." The room became completely silent. People looked at him differently now. Not as an overwhelmed father. Not as a struggling parent. Not as someone incapable. They saw strength. They saw courage. They saw discipline. But Elias himself seemed almost uncomfortable with the attention. Because that chapter of his life belonged to another version of himself. Before loss. Before hospitals. Before funerals. Before becoming a father who measured victories by successful bedtime routines and packed lunches. Years earlier, Elias had operated in dangerous environments few people could imagine. He had trained alongside some of the world's most elite soldiers. He had faced situations where split-second decisions determined survival. But after his wife's diagnosis, priorities changed. He left behind a career defined by missions. He chose family. He chose love. He chose to be present. He promised his wife he would protect Nora not only from danger but from loneliness. That promise mattered more than medals. More than recognition. More than respect. The cafe owner approached Elias with tears in her eyes. She thanked him repeatedly. Customers who had laughed earlier now seemed ashamed. One woman walked over carefully. She apologized. She admitted she had judged him unfairly. She assumed his exhaustion reflected weakness. Elias smiled gently. He understood. Because society often celebrates visible strength while overlooking quiet sacrifice. People admire heroes wearing uniforms. But they rarely notice heroes folding laundry at midnight. They praise courage in battle. Yet they overlook courage in sitting beside a grieving child every evening and answering impossible questions. Why did mommy leave? Will everyone leave? Are we going to be okay? Those questions were harder for Elias than any mission he had ever completed. Weeks passed after the incident. Someone had recorded security footage. The story spread online. Millions watched videos describing the mysterious single father who moved like an elite operator to protect strangers. Journalists reached out. Television producers requested interviews. Podcasts invited him to speak. He declined most opportunities. He wasn't interested in becoming famous. He simply wanted peace. He wanted to raise Nora. He wanted ordinary mornings. He wanted pancakes without spilled juice becoming international headlines. But one invitation changed everything. A local community center asked Elias to speak to single parents. At first, he refused. Then Nora encouraged him. She hugged him and said her mother always liked helping people. So he agreed. Standing before dozens of mothers and fathers, Elias shared something deeply personal. He explained that strength doesn't always look impressive. Sometimes strength means getting out of bed despite grief. Sometimes strength means continuing after losing everything. Sometimes strength means choosing patience when people misunderstand you. He admitted there were days he felt broken. Days he cried in empty rooms. Days he questioned whether he was enough. But every morning, Nora reminded him why he had to keep moving forward. Because children do not need perfect parents. They need present parents. They need love. They need consistency. They need someone willing to show up repeatedly, even when life becomes difficult. The audience listened quietly. Some wiped away tears. Others nodded with understanding. For the first time in years, Elias felt something unexpected. Connection. He realized he wasn't alone. There were countless parents carrying invisible burdens. Widowed mothers. Divorced fathers. Grandparents raising grandchildren. People surviving heartbreak while pretending everything was normal. People fighting silent battles. People deserving compassion rather than judgment. Months later, Elias returned to the same cafe. The atmosphere felt different. Employees greeted Nora by name. Customers smiled warmly. Children waved. Nora proudly carried a flower she had picked during their walk. She handed it to a tired waitress. "Flowers help people feel better," she said. The waitress smiled through tears. Elias watched his daughter and understood something beautiful. Children learn love from watching it. Even amid grief. Even amid struggle. Even after unimaginable loss. Love continues. Love teaches. Love survives. As sunlight poured through the windows once again, Elias realized he no longer cared what strangers assumed about him. People would always judge appearances. Some would see weakness. Others would see failure. But those who truly looked closer would discover something else entirely. A father keeping promises. A man rebuilding a shattered life. A soldier who once protected nations but now devoted himself entirely to protecting one little girl. And perhaps that was his greatest mission of all. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to Heart Kindness Tales so more people can hear stories that remind us to look beyond appearances and choose compassion. Special request, comment below with, "Kindness sees beyond appearances," if you believe every person deserves understanding before judgment. Because sometimes the strongest people in the world are not standing on battlefields. They are sitting quietly in cafes, cleaning spilled juice from tables, carrying heavy hearts, honoring old promises, and loving their children with everything they have left. And that kind of courage deserves to be seen. If you'd like, I can also create an SEO-optimized YouTube description, keywords, hashtags, and thumbnail text for this story.